Planning. This is the most neglected part of stargazing and astronomy by beginners. The difference between having a plan and not having a plan can mean you can go out with a plan and have a few targets in mind. You can find them, especially if there's clouds coming in or something like that, and you've got a very limited time, and you will slowly build up that knowledge and you start to recognize things in more detail and you will start learning more as well. But it will also stop you from having the let's go out and look at the sky and see what I can find. And you spot two or three constellations and then you get bored because you don't know what else is there. And you're thinking, well, is that a constellation there? I'm not sure. And you can end up becoming demotivated. So planning is great because you can give yourself a couple of targets to find. Maybe there's a particular event like an occultation or a conjunction or an eclipse that you want to see, and therefore you have your target in mind. Or maybe you just want to learn your way around the night sky. Maybe you just want to observe something um, that is really spectacular and beautiful to you, like going to see the Milky Way or going to see an aurora. So having a plan is really important, even if it's a really basic plan of three constellations that you want to take a look at. So, how you can put together your plan. I really like almanacs and annual guides for your latitude and continent. I say that because you've got different stars available depending on your hemisphere and latitude and the time of year, but also depending on your continent. So, if there's an eclipse, it may have a very specific path. So, it might go um, down a specific route. And if you're not in that route, then you're not going to see it. So, if, for example, I'm in Europe, in the UK, if there's an eclipse happening over Asia or Australia or the Americas, and I've got one of their guides, not only are the stars going to be slightly out because let's say I'm looking at a Canadian guide that's the same latitude, they might have an eclipse that I can't see. So annual guides are really helpful for beginners because it gives you an idea of the targets. And then, as you become more confident and more competent, you can start using the star guides in astronomy magazines. And eventually, you will start knowing what it is that you're interested in. So, if you're only interested in eclipses, you will be looking up when those happen in various different softwares or planners. Maybe you're a member of an eclipse hunting group, or maybe if aurora is your thing, there are aurora hunting groups. So you will find what is interesting to you and you will know where to find the information on where those are and plan around it. So, astronomy magazines are the next thing that are great. So, you can pick one of these. They will have a star chart for your area. They will have the big events as well. So, if there are meteor showers, if there are comets, if there are eclipses and conjunctions and things, it will tell you. So, again, all the work is done. It'll be in a bit more detail than the night sky guide, but by this point, you will have more of an idea of what you're looking at. So, that detail isn't so overwhelming. You can then also look at online star guides and charts, but that's probably beyond the scope of someone who's a brand new astronomer. The next thing as well is communities. So, your local astronomical society is a great place to start. They like mentoring new people. Find YouTube astronomers in your area. They'll often have like what you can see this month in this location, and it'll be between three and five things to look at. So, that can be really good, and they can often give useful hints and tips as to where to find them. There may be social media astronomy groups, such as on Facebook, for your locality, so they may have monthly targets suggested there as well. I highly recommend if you have a local astronomical society, checking them out because usually they will be more than happy to help newcomers into the hobby. So, how to plan? So, if there's a specific event like a comet or an eclipse or a meteor shower or planetary movements like a conjunction, you can find out from various guides when these are going to happen. So, your annual guide will probably mention them, or you may even see something in the news or in a Facebook group. So, keep an eye out. keep news searches going to see when they're going to happen, and then take a look at specific times, dates, and locations. So I mentioned the moon occulting Mars in another video, which is where the appeared to cover up Mars. So Mars disappears behind the moon and reappears. That happens in a very short time span, like an hour or so. Same with eclipses, they happen in an extremely short time span, like minutes. So you want to make sure you know the time and date as well as the location. There are opportunistic events as well, such as unknown comets. So they might last for a few months, but comets coming in that we didn't know about, and also aurorae. So you might not know whether the aurora forecast is particularly good, but suddenly a couple of days before, there looks like there's going to be quite a few sort of solar storms. So it's going to be good. So keep an eye on the weather and maybe get yourself to more polar latitudes to see if you can spot them. So those are the two short-term plannings, but standard planning, I always have the week around, so a few days either side of the new moon, which is my optimum stargazing. I will look for the weather forecast and hope for a clear night on at least one of those nights, ideally the weekend night. Um, and then I will take a look at what I think is going to happen there. So I may have some constellations I want to look at. And you might think, well, I know where all the things are within that constellation now. But as you become more observant and more knowledgeable of the night sky, you will start learning things like actually that star is a nebula, actually between those two stars is a black hole, actually that star is a star forming nebula, actually there is some dust or gas around that area that I can't see with my night sky. Sometimes it's just super meditative and you can stare into the sky or into a region and let your brain work its way through various different problems or conundrums you're trying to solve. So for me, sometimes when I'm thinking of code, I will be uh, looking at the night sky and it will help me. And eventually, if you do get something like a telescope or get into astrophotography, taking in the detail, and it's mind blowing. And with astrophotography, you really have to plan, and it's good to get used to planning in advance. So with my astrophotography, I have a list of the equipment I need, so the specific lenses, for example. I will know the exact time and date and where I'm going, which bit of the sky is available to me. I will have what my plan is, so how many exposures I think I need, how long those exposures need to be, what ISO I think I need, what lens I need, and I write it all out in advance. And you also take multiple different pictures. You have your lights, you have your flats, you have your darks and biases. I will write all those out so I have a very specific list. But even if you're not doing astrophotography or you don't have a telescope, taking the time to plan means that when you get out there, it's not a case of, oh, right, I can see a couple of things. Now, what do I do? So, what I liked to do when I was learning my way around the sky is I would find one constellation, then I would find another obvious constellation. And once I had all the big ones sorted, I started looking for the small ones and filling them in. So, for example, Taurus, which is, from my perspective, uh, higher and to the right of Orion, because I'm in the northern hemisphere. It's sort of halfway between Orion and the Pleiades, is Aldebaran, which is the brightest star within Taurus. So I knew that was there, and it took me a while to spot the other stars within Taurus. And the same when I went to the left of Orion, from my perspective, I could see Castor and Pollux, which are two bright stars, and they are stars of the Gemini constellation. So you just start filling in the sky around you. And I knew that I had the Milky Way in between Gemini and Orion. I can't see it, but I know it's there and I know what things lie either side of that line. So you just start filling in, even with your mind's eye, where things are, even if you can't see them. And having a plan can really help you learn the night sky because you go, okay, I can now recognize these constellations, but this patch I am not so sure on. So, what's the most obvious one? And start learning your way that way. And you will notice that you start really learning your way around the night sky with a decent plan. So, a reminder when planning, don't forget to take into account your safety, travel time, layers, food, drink, available facilities like are there toilets around, or is it a case of you have to hold it and all go into the bush? Any camping equipment to make yourself comfy, as well as planning what you want to observe and have a few backup things as well in case there's a bit of cloud in the way of the constellation or the star that you want to look at. So, we've covered why you should have a plan. If you want to get into astronomy, what resources you can use to plan your observing sessions, and what to consider when planning a session.